What's up guys? No matter what, some new releases are more exciting than others. There might be phones that you've been waiting for months, and some of the other ones that kind of slip through. You know they've been released, but you don't care about them that much. The ZTE Axon 30 Ultra definitely belongs to the more exciting category for a couple of reasons. First of all, when you have the Ultra in the name, it has to mean something, right? You can't just slap an Ultra in the phone name and release a plain device, because you will look like a fool, right? Second of all is the price. So the phone is getting a global release in a couple of days and it will start at $750, which is a lot less than some of the other top-of-the-line flagships. And last but not least, it's been a while since we've had a contender from ZTE, and more competition is always a good thing. So let's find out whether this ZTE Axon 30 Ultra is something you too should be excited about. Let's take a moment to talk about the physical aspect of the device, because that's very important, right? No matter if your phone has top-of-the-line specs, it's still a thing you hold physically with your hands, so it has to be comfortable, because you might potentially hold it for multiple hours every single day. And well, this is completely subjective, because obviously you might like smaller or bigger phones, heavier or lighter. I think for me, first and foremost, this is the part that ZTE really nailed with the Axon 30 Ultra. The moment I took it out of the box, it felt absolutely amazing. It is somewhat boxy with flat top and bottom, and it's slightly higher than usual with 20:9 aspect ratio, but weight has been kept nicely under 190 grams, which is just perfect for me. Some corners must have been cut though, so we don't have the newest Gorilla Glass Victus, but instead Gorilla Glass 5 on the front as well as the back of the device. The looks are really on point for me too, definitely one of the sleeker looking phones in the recent times. I also got this amazing case. It wasn't part of the box, it came with my order in a separate box, so I can't really tell if it's going to be added to every purchase, but it's this high quality vegan leather material, and it's definitely one of the best cases I've seen that came with the phone. So I already mentioned the phone has a 20:9 aspect ratio screen, and the biggest talking point about the screen is clearly the 144Hz refresh rate, which is the first time we are seeing in a device that's not a dedicated gaming phone. Albeit it's really hard to tell the difference between 144 and 120Hz on a phone, it is nonetheless a step up from a usual 120Hz we've been seeing on flagship phones these days. I have to mention this is not an LTPO AMOLED screen, which means it can't dynamically adjust the refresh rate as well as some of the other screens, therefore saving battery, but I've had it set to 144Hz at all times and the battery life has been solid, but more on that later. The screen is curved, which is obviously polarizing. I don't mind it that much, especially since I hadn't had any problems with accidental touches, and there's also a misclick prevention setting in software in case it causes any problems to you. So the screen is obviously battery smooth, that's to be expected with the refresh rate, it's super responsive. As for the brightness, I couldn't find any exact nit numbers, but next to the screen on the Xiaomi Mi 11 Pro, which has a 1500 nit screen, the one on the ZTE seems a touch brighter at max brightness, which is definitely impressive. One obvious disappointment is the fact that we still have a punch hole for selfie camera. The under-display selfie camera has been teased to appear possibly in this device, but apparently the tech wasn't quite ready to put it in a flagship device, so looks like we're going to have to wait a little bit longer for that. The under-display fingerprint scanner is very good, definitely much better than the one on the Xiaomi Mi 11 Pro I recently reviewed. It's extremely quick and I couldn't make it fail no matter how I positioned my finger, so all in all, extremely reliable and one of the best ones out there. The phone runs ZTE MyOS on top of Android 11, and if I had to describe it in as few words as possible, I would probably say unintrusive. It is very close to stock Android feature-wise. ZTE didn't add a lot of extra functionality in here. I like that the settings page is nicely color-coded, so it's nice and clean. Pretty much everything works as intended. I haven't found any bugs in the software, everything pretty much worked as it should. In terms of fitting the phone to your liking, there's quite a lot of customization possibilities via multiple themes as well as some of the other options. One major concern are definitely the updates down the line, because ZTE hasn't been stellar in that regard in the past. I've heard some voices that they claim 2 years of software updates, but whether that's going to be true remains to be seen. For example, the ZTE Axon 20 still hasn't received the Android 11 update, so something to keep in mind. Performance is expectedly great. I've already talked about the general software performance, which is great, and the general device performance is awesome as well. It is a true flagship and it performs as one. Snapdragon 888, 8 to 16 gigs of RAM, 128 to a whopping 1TB of UFS 3.1 storage. I don't know about you, but to me 1TB of storage on a phone seems rather ridiculous. But as far as the announcement said, the global variant will top at the 12/256 variant, which makes more sense. I have to mention that it gets quite warm in games. After like 15 to 20 minutes of playing Genshin Impact, the phone got noticeably warm. Not like piping hot to the point it's uncomfortable to hold, but definitely very warm, so something to keep in mind. One aspect of the phone where the ZTE Axon 30 Ultra lags a little bit behind the competition is the battery department. 4600 mAh, not the biggest cell around, not the smallest one either. It hasn't died on me yet before the end of the day, which is nice, and I've had it set to 144 Hz 24/7, mind you. The fact that the screen isn't a 1440p resolution one definitely helps to keep the battery life in check. I've seen anything ranging from 6 to 7 hours of screen on time, which isn't bad. As far as the charging goes, the phone supports 66W fast wired charging and actually comes with a charger in the box. No wireless charging, which is kind of odd given that both the Axon 9 Pro and the 10 Pro supported it, but I guess ZTE doubled down on the fast wired charging instead. I'm not going to say that wireless charging is a necessity for a 2021 flagship, but it would definitely be nice to see. Stereo speakers are present on the phone, and ZTE also offers a bunch of audio settings under the DTS sound settings to configure everything to your needs, ranging from a lot of presets for different applications, as well as a graphic EQ to configure every frequency however you want. The speakers sound nice and clean. They're also really balanced, which isn't always the case with smartphone speakers. Sometimes the bottom one is a little bit louder, and none of this stuff is happening here. There is, however, a tiny bit of distortion at max volume. Okay, the cameras. So ZTE decided to do things a little bit differently from other manufacturers, so we don't have the huge main sensor accompanied by smaller ones, but they decided to focus on resolution rather than sensor size. So in the end we have three 64 megapixel cameras. First is the main camera, 26mm with f1.6 aperture. The second one is a portrait lens, 35mm, so a little tighter, with f1.9 aperture. And also an ultra-wide 30mm with 120 degrees field of view. And last but not least, we have a tried and true 8 megapixel periscope telephoto with 5x optical zoom and also optical image stabilization to help stabilize these zoomed in photos. The results are for the most part very good. Main camera photos show impressive amount of detail and are also very repetitive for the most part, which is great. Although the dynamic range is not as consistent as with the photos coming from some of the competition, which is certainly a result of using a smaller sensor. ZTE tried to compensate for that by using a wider aperture of 1.6 for the main camera, but it only helps up to a point. It is actually the slightly unusual 35mm lens that has shown the best results, besting the main sensor in both sharpness and dynamic range for the most part. It is also easier to keep more of the subject in focus with that lens. Lots of times it was actually advantageous for me to back off a little bit and shoot at 2x zoom for best results. The ultra-wide camera is also where the high resolution helps massively. Photos are pretty much as detailed as the ones coming from the main camera. There is although a tiny loss of sharpness on the edges. Telephoto performs admirably, the iOS helps quite a lot. Both 5x optical zoom and 10x hybrid zoom are very high quality. I wouldn't go past 20x though, this is where the quality drops noticeably. I normally wouldn't do selfies, but some of you asked, so there you go. I would say the normal selfie looks better, portrait mode looks rather weird on the left side, but it's possibly because of the white background. As for the video capabilities, Axon 30 Ultra shoots up to 4K 60fps from all the rear cameras, and it can also shoot 8K 30fps from the main camera. This is obviously less stable, but shows impressive amount of detail if you can keep the phone steady. So the ZTE Axon 30 Ultra, it actually reminds me a lot of the Vivo X60 Pro Plus I reviewed a while back, in that they are both great flagship phones, but they both lack the two premium flagship features, the wireless charging and IP certification. It just seems that these two are what phone manufacturers decide to cut when they want to bring the price a little bit down. Do I still recommend this phone? Absolutely. At $750, the price to performance ratio of this one is great, off the charts, pretty much better than any other phone in this price range. The obvious major drawback is the uncertainty with the updates, because while ZTE promises 2 years of software support, you don't really know whether they will fulfill this promise, but I would assume that if they decide to release a phone globally and they advertise it, make a huge deal out of it, that they will try to fulfill this promise. So I wouldn't worry about it that much, but it's something to keep in mind. Okay, that's it for me for today, guys. As usual, if you liked the video, hit the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed it and want to support me moving forward. And I'll see you in the next one.